On this episode of Hungry Riders, we finally make it to Ushuaia.
And we have a little bit of predictable bike trouble along the way.
This is
Hungry Riders.
So we're heading towards Punta Arenas, and on the way we stopped at a gas station, and it has...
a large collection of stickers.
Yeah, there were so many stickers from people doing very similar trips to what we were doing, both on motorcycles, bicycles, all kinds of different things, people from all over the world. So yeah, we added ours to the collection.
This is kind of a recurring theme that we've seen throughout the trip, but like if we see an opportunity like this, we can't resist. So we are headed to Punta Arenas. This is going to be one of the largest major towns we've been in for a long time, and it's kind of a trade hub for the bottom of the continent.
That landmass in the distance behind me is Tierra del Fuego, which is our destination tomorrow.
One of the things we were trying to get done was to fix my computer. The power supply had gone out, and we've been trying to get this problem fixed so that we could make these episodes.
This was pretty much the major reason we stopped making episodes, because the main computer that we used to do on didn't work anymore because we couldn't run it with any kind of power. And it was like a gaming laptop kind of thing, so like it had a really large power brick, and that was not something we could find in that area.
Or fix.
Yeah, so we kept trying. And we thought the good chance of that would happen in Punta Arenas.
But no.
So we're in Punta Arenas, which is the bottom of the world, Chile. We're going to take a ferry over to Tierra del Fuego tomorrow. But we came for dinner last night. We just had sandwiches at a local sandwich shop that's near our hostel. And we had sandwiches, they were good, but what everyone else ordered was this thing called pichanga. And that's what this is here. And we thought, man, that's just a mountain of French fries. What the heck is that? And because like a table basically ordered it, it was this big pile, and apparently there's all kinds of stuff inside of it underneath the French fries, mainly meat, but it's pork, steak, chicken, chorizo. I think there's some hot dog in there, tomato, eggs. And it's just a big mix of stuff, and apparently it's a really popular dish here in Punta Arenas, and it's one of those really hearty fares in cold weather environments, so I'm ready to chow down. Oh, you're also supposed to use a fork apparently, but maybe that's because like the table of 4 people shared it. But let's see what's in there. Yeah, it's like a marinated meat inside. That is good.
Punta Arenas being a big town and actually a duty-free zone, this is a great place to stock up on your necessary motorcycle supplies. So one of the things we knew we were going to need to make it all the way back up north is another set of tires. So we took the opportunity to buy some there. Size opportunities are a bit more limited. I think we had the choice of like a really expensive tire or just some like pretty knobby things, which we don't really need at this point because we won't be doing that much dirt, and we're not going to put them on for a while anyway. We have another couple 1,000 miles left on our tires or so.
And so then we tried to hop on the ferry, and I say tried to because the first morning that we went over there, it was really, really windy.
Yeah. And I thought, this is something they're used to down there. It's, it just happens.
Know how to work around it.
And, this is, again, something we necessarily got on camera, but we just had the bikes parked in, like, a cement, paved parking spot, not even, like, in that bad of an angle, and the wind was able to blow over our bikes. And
it blew it over the kickstand. It wasn't like it was leaning...
Yeah, parked optimally, let's say that.
Yeah. It pushed the motorcycle across the kickstand, over the kickstand, and fell it and made it fall over. So anyway, the
not a
ferry...
big deal because the bikes are made for that though. So.
But that also means that it was too windy for the ferry to run. So we could not get on the ferry that day, which is not a big deal.
The bikes blowing over is probably a good sign to probably not go out on the ferry. It must have been like, 70 miles an hour or something like that.
Yeah, it was
a lot. Like you could like lean into it kind of thing and not blow over.
So we tried again the next day, and the wind had died down enough for the ferry to run the next day. So we rode our bikes up onto the ferry and strapped them down. Aaron wasn't too pleased with their tie job.
Well, like I checked the bike when I left, and like they were still tying it up. But like if I were to do it again, I would stay there for the whole like tying down process because they kind of tweaked a luggage rack a little bit, putting a strap across.
Then we went upstairs to the cabin to hang out and look at the view.
Yep, and it was a relatively quick ferry ride. You know, it wasn't a good chunk of the day. We still had, I don't know, 100 miles left to do that day or so. So we're heading down kind of a main highway again, not a big deal, a little bit windy, but still very doable. And there had been something I'd been keeping a very close eye on for the last while, and that was my chain. You know, keeping it as clean as we could, lubricating it, adjusting it as it gets getting stretched out. I knew it was an issue, and we're gonna basically get it changed in the next town because I knew it kind of needed it.
We'd already bought a new one.
Yeah, we had it with us at that time, and right along and chain breaks, which is really a bad thing to happen on a motorcycle
while you're riding it.
Yeah, and so I kind of knew exactly what it was because again, like I was somewhat expecting it, or you know, so we pulled over and can't make any power to the motorcycle, and took a look at it. Yep, chain is broken. And then the other side of that is there's this little guard area and then some electrical wires on the other side of it. The chain had snapped, broken the guard, and snapped a bunch of other wires right next to it. So even getting a new chain put on the side of the road, like probably still not going to work. And we were relatively close to a town called Rio Grande, which again is another somewhat major town. That's where we're going to get this stuff done anyway.
So we flagged down another motorcyclist. They came in and looked at it with us, and yeah, there's really not
made
much
the same
we can
assessment.
do.
Yeah, we could put the chain on. We had the tools for it, but you know, with all the other issues. So, and you know, so we had a cell phone with us, not working because it's kind of somewhat out in the middle of nowhere. Like there's not next to a town. And so we just flagged another truck down. They went into town, called a tow truck for us, and then had them come back out. And that was kind of the process. It was relatively quick, because I think it was maybe 10 minutes from the town, 10-15 minutes. So it was about half an hour until we got the truck and loaded it up.
So I followed the tow truck into Rio Grande, and we found a mechanic shop.
Yeah, we had to go to a couple different places, and with Seraphina's following the tow truck, and the tow truck's driving around until we found a place that would take us at that time and get the chain put on. Again, we pretty much had everything with us that was needed to do it. So we found this cool little shop and had some, you know, pets around and that kind of stuff. Talked to the guy, got the chain put on, got the wire soldered back together, and then we rode off to our campground, kind of / hostel place, where it was a little secure courtyard. Where we set up the tent, stayed the night, and then getting the bikes warmed up the next morning, ready to go, and like the bike's not starting. And so I opened things up again, and I guess the soldering job that was done was not quite that good. We tried to get a hold of the mechanic guy, no response. So you know, this is where you got to kind of take care of things yourselves. So what I did was go to an automotive shop that was just kind of nearby, walking around the neighborhood. And I was able to borrow their soldering equipment and was able to put things back together and get things running again. But at that point, the day was kind of shot, and we had to, you know, stay another night.
So we keep heading towards Ushuaia, and it started raining a little bit. It wasn't too bad, nothing like we haven't done before.
And cold. And I also got to mention, leaving the Rio Grande, there was like a lot of wind. I think this was the windiest section we've done, similar to what we kind of experienced in Punta Arenas with the ferry. And you know, I think you can't tell it from, but it feels like you're leaning over on the bike, like into the wind, because it's kind of coming at you from the side. And it was pretty tricky actually, and relatively uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Definitely not a light cruise down the road.
Especially when you pair it with the rain that we got into. Yeah, it was challenging, but it was fine. The roads were a lot better. The roads were paved at this point. And especially once we got closer to Ushuaia, there was a lot more infrastructure there because Ushuaia is kind of a touristy spot. There's cruise ships that go out of that town, and you know, it's got a whole shipping industry there. And we finally made it to Ushuaia.
Yay!
Yay! We made it to the bottom of the world.
We did. That was pretty amazing.
Almost.
When you first set out on the trip, it's not something you think you're actually going to do or
It
like
seems
imagine
so
yourself.
far away.
Yeah, and it seems like 5 lifetimes ago as well from when you left.
But yeah, it was a cool little port town. We stayed a few nights with a local family there, and
Couch surfing, which was really cool to be able to find something like that.
And at this point, we were trying to figure out what we were going to do after we hit Buenos Aires.
So we were looking at flights to head back home, actually to the East Coast from Buenos Aires, and at the same time we were looking at cruises from Ushuaia to Antarctica. I had heard that you could get, like a few people told us on the trip, you can get like a super cheap cruise because like the boat's about to leave, there's an empty cabin, like they don't care, they're gonna try and just like get some people on there.
Because you're
like,
so close to Antarctica already, you're
like-
most of the way there.
So we
We were looking at the prices
the
for
fifth the
that.
price, and I did see some advertisements for that, but it wasn't a deal. Like it was like gonna be I think $5,000 basically per person to take the cruise from Ushuaia from the ones that we saw.
Which did not seem worth it because again, we were most of the way there.
We didn't have money for that either.
Right.
That was way too much. So
but when looking at that, we realized that there were cruise ships going from Buenos Aires to New York.
Yeah. And I was looking at it, and the prices were exactly the same as a one-way ticket from Buenos Aires to New York. So
That seemed a little bit more appealing.
yeah, so
3 weeks.
yeah, 18 days instead of like a one-day flight, but like food, all that kind of stuff with it, like nice and relaxing. That sounds pretty appealing.
So we bought tickets for that and headed back up the coast.
So we're heading back north. Like our trip doesn't necessarily end in Ushuaia. Like you could do that and try and like deal with the bikes and shipping and flying back from there, that kind of stuff. But like actually we didn't want to go to Ushuaia to begin with. We were going to Buenos Aires because the point of this was to visit your
My brother.
brother in Argentina in Buenos Aires, which we passed like a few thousand miles back.
So we had to turn around and head back up on the east coast of the country.
Yeah,
this
it was
time.
very, very different. Before we're kind of going in and out of Chile and Patagonia and that kind of stuff, dirt roads and gravel and that kind of stuff. This is just, 2-lane highway, the whole way. Very uneventful in the grand scheme of things.
So we went back through Rio Grande and kept going and then heading north towards Rio Gallegos. And along the road, we saw somebody on the side of the road riding a unicycle. And it turns out that this was somebody that we had met at the hostel in Rio Grande when we were fixing the bike. We had met her and we'd talked to her and all that kind of stuff. And she was in the middle of riding her unicycle through Patagonia. A French woman.
And she started in Ushuaia and made it, I don't know, it was
North.
100 miles or so far when we were in Rio Grande.
She was in Rio Grande the same time we were going south. She was going north. So her unicycle took her the same distance as we went south and then back up north again in the same amount of time.
Yep, so just go along the side of the road. So, of course, we're going to stop and say hello.
And she had actually accidentally taken my headlamp. And
because you had the identical headlamp and thought she just left hers out was the issue.
So she realized her mistake after we had parted ways, and so that meeting at her on the side of the road was a chance to reunite.
She's like, "Is this yours?"
Yes.
Yes, that is ours.
So we came up on our next ferry ride of the trip, and this one was much smaller. There was no ferry terminal, no official infrastructure really. You just pull up on the street that ends in the ocean and you wait in line until the boat gets there.
And we got there like perfect timing.
It was.
Because it's not that big of a boat. Maybe it takes 20 cars or something.
There ended up being a really long line behind us.
Yeah, there was like 50 cars behind us or something like that.
But that also meant we had to wait a while, which was fine. Aaron checked out the travel guide book, and we kept our helmets on because it was cold, and those helmets are very nice at keeping the wind off your face, which was nice.
And we can chat from 50 feet away.
Because we had our intercoms on through the helmets, yeah. So we finally loaded onto this ferry and pet some sheep while we were there.
We enjoyed that. What did I say?
And this was it was a lot shorter ride. We saw a bunch of motorcycles waiting to get on the other side as we were offloading.
Got a wave.
And then kept kept on riding up the road, and then we went into our last border crossing, back into Argentina for the last motorcycle border crossing of that trip.
And yeah, this was a somewhat memorable one, because of course we're crossing a motorcycle border for the last time. We've crossed so many up to this point. Also, I think we mentioned earlier, we've been like refilling the oil. Basically every couple times we'd fill up with gas, we'd be putting more oil in Serafina's bike because we were supposed to replace the piston. We couldn't get parts in Chile, so that's what we're doing. And at this border crossing, we happened to forget to put the oil cap back on the motor.
It was my bike. I forgot. I left it laying on the bike somewhere and drove off.
Yeah, we drove off, and it flew off along the side of the road. And
we realized it pretty quickly.
Yeah, we're maybe a mile or two up, and like this probably wouldn't be like a showstopper, but like you don't want stuff getting in the engine. Like, how are we gonna find that same part with the thread? So like you want to find this oil cap. So I turned around, did one loop back down to the border as carefully as I could. Didn't see it along the way. Went to the border, turned around again, and I saw it. I found it. Like, oh man, I was so relieved, because that would have been a huge pain to not have that. That's not something. You probably should carry an extra one of those, but it's not something you would really think about. I found it, and we put it back in. We're good to go.
No big deal.
Save the trip, or save your motor at least. Yeah. I don't know, because that would have been bad.
So we're heading up the east coast of Argentina, and there's a whole lot of nothing up there on that stretch. A few little coastal cute towns, lots more camping, but no real sights to see other than the ocean, which is beautiful.
We are on a mission to like get this trip done at this point. And
getting kind of tired.
Yeah, and it's it's not as like stimulating of areas that we've seen before.
The roads were a lot better.
Yeah, that's good.
No more dirt roads.
Got the tire changed along the way. I think we had another flat tire or so, but nothing big deal that we hadn't run into before.
My GPS was still on the fritz, so we ended up using our backup GPS, which was a handheld device.
Yeah, just like battery powered. We could have wired it into the bike, but
we were almost there.
Like, you really don't need directions for most of this trip anyway. It's only like when you're in a town or something like that.
Yeah, we really just needed to find our way, navigate through Buenos Aires itself to find our destination. Again, it took us about a week from Ushuaia to Buenos Aires. What was it, 3,000 kilometers or so?
About that.
But once we got close to the city, we went through a toll booth, and then it was like real freeway, like 6-lane, 8-lane, both sides, billboards, giant buildings. We were back.
Yeah, it felt like a culture shock all over again. Like, we kind of got culture shock when we went from the U.S. into like Mexico and like what that was going to be like, and we got real freeways. Like, it felt like we're pulling into a super city.
And we got a little lost kind of driving through Buenos Aires because the street name had like a north instead of a south on it or something. We got mixed up somehow, and we ended up in the wrong neighborhood. And
yeah, we were going to stay with Serafina's sister-in-law, who was offering up her place for us to stay.
They had a house there.
Which was super nice. The other part of that is there's no parking. Like, there's no garage, no stop, and like we can't leave the bikes on the street. Because
this is kind of like a little downtown-y area. There's restaurants and shops down below, and people live up above, so there's not a whole lot.
And you don't need a car in Buenos Aires. We didn't use the bikes usually either. Like, we just took the bus or walked or things like that. Lots of things were close. So we had to find a place to securely park the bikes, and so we went around, talked to a bunch of parking garages, and I think it was pretty expensive too. I think it was like $50 for like the week or something.
And it was a few blocks away. We had to walk to it. Yeah, that worked out. And so then we were done with the bikes. We ended up selling these bikes to somebody we had met earlier on in the trip in northern Argentina, and so we drove through the city and drove to a shipping company and said goodbye.
Yeah, we'd been asking people all along the trip of like, hey, we're selling the bikes at some point, like, come and get them.
Who wants them?
And you say that enough times, you actually find someone that will actually want to buy the bikes, which worked out well. So that worked amazingly well, and they just shipped the bikes from Buenos Aires, and it was kind of bittersweet handing off the bikes, but the bikes totally did the job for us. They were the right bikes for us for the trip. We're perfectly happy with that, but it wasn't like we were like super invested in those bikes in particular. other people that would been, riding from Europe that had like their 70s BMW that was the only bike they're ever going to travel on, so they have to ship it around everywhere. Here, like these are the type of bikes, if they got wrecked along the way or something happened to them, we would potentially just buy another bike.
Yeah, like you said, they did the job they were supposed to do, and we were glad about it, but still fine to say goodbye at the same time.
So that's it for this part of the trip. Like, it was great. It was amazing, but it's not over yet. We still hang out for a few weeks in Buenos Aires.
And then we take a cruise ship up to the east coast of the U.S. and ride back west, back to California.
On new bikes-ish. New to us.